JC Mortgage Podcast, episode number 34 with the great John Coleman of JC Mortgages. And we're talking about mortgage and home buying mistakes today.
Thanks, Norm. I wish you'd downplay the great John Coleman. Just John Coleman would do fine. Thank you for those kind words. Yes, hello everyone. I can't believe this is episode number, what is it, Norm, did you say?
34.
34. We'll soon be catching up with my age, but we'll keep that. That's a hidden secret for the moment.
29? Is that, we already passed 29. What are you talking about?
Oh, you're a charmer, my friend. You're a charmer.
Absolutely. So we're talking about, of course, mortgage and home buying mistakes, and it's such a big process. It gets a little confusing. There's so much information out there, especially with first-time buyers. It gets overwhelming and frustrating. So any mistake that you could prevent people from making can really save them time, money, and also prevent heartache, right?
Yeah, no one. Obviously, this is something I talk about all the time, so it's pretty much top of mind. But I always feel, and there's probably a list of maybe 4 or 5 significant mistakes that people would make. The one mistake that's sort of very understandable, but one that sort of can cause the greatest problems in terms of, where I always start from is an educational point of view, whereby I hammer this point home: know where you are, so you know what you need to do to get where you want to get to, right? And that means talking to someone like myself. Doesn't need to be yourself, but educating yourself with someone who knows the business, who knows how the banks operate, who can then give you a proper plan. Lots of people, and listen, in the different worlds of life, I'd probably do the same thing myself. They like to take shortcuts, and the shortcut is their friends. My friend got this because of, and he's the same set of circumstances as me. So they have this expectation in their head, right, based on a little tiny piece of information that their friend has got, and they've taken that one piece of information and made that the golden rule. That's what I can do because my friend
Yeah.
did it. So what people tend to do is they trust the wrong source. Okay, they go to a group of friends or whatever it may be, and they're hearing little pieces of information, and they're picking up the wrong picture on the back of it, right? So it's a bit like going to your mate and asking him about your headache. I'm just saying, talking and getting diagnosis or getting a sort of a
There's
solution based.
certain things you want professional life
Yeah,
in
I'm not.
life, like taxes, medical things, and of course mortgage and real estate, right?
Absolutely, and it's like the information is out there, and there's a lot of information. And I always say to people, you need to educate yourself, but sometimes a little piece of information does more harm than good. Okay, if you
Yeah.
think, especially if you're misinterpreting the one piece of information, like some people say, "Oh, I got the banks will lend me 4.75 times my salary." Now, one person out of 100 might get that, but it's not a given rule. Okay, or some person may have heard, okay, well, I earn X, but they forget that half of their X is made up of bonuses or commission. So it's the devil is, and I'm kind of passionate about this. The devil is always in the detail, right?
Hmm.
Like, and I prefer, and I'll say this to people. People come to me and they would ask me, "Can I get this?" And I prefer to tell them, "No, this is what you can do," and they walk away from me because they don't like what I'm telling them, and they go to
Yeah.
find what they want themselves, and that's perfectly fine. I don't want to be the guy who tells them what they want to hear and then manages their expectations backwards.
Yeah.
That's just not
Yeah.
the way I do business.
And it's
It's
a good point. When I used to be in the mortgage and real estate business a million years ago, we used to say that people always go to the wrong source for information, to your point. And it's their friend, it's their mechanic, it's their neighbor, it's their
It can be
best
the tax
friend's
man, by the
brothers,
way.
cousins,
Yeah,
ex-girlfriend's sister's neighbor. It's like,
yeah.
come on, listen to a professional. So that is one of the big mortgage and home buying mistakes, huh?
Yeah, and I'm not plugging myself here. I'm saying talk to, even if they want to go directly to the bank, their own bank,
Yeah.
just get
Yeah.
real information rather than second-hand information, because ultimately that can lead to false expectations, and that's it can be heartbreaking. Like buying a home, as you know, it's such one of the biggest things you'll do in your life. It's such a hugely emotional, because you see yourself, this is where I'm going to live. You have all these future plans based around one little decision, right? And if you're picking up the wrong end of the stick, it can lead to disappointment. It can lead to a whole heap of time being wasted looking at, because the most natural thing in the world for people to do is, okay, this is what I can get from the bank. And they kind of box that off in their head without really having done the proper due
Yeah.
diligence behind it. And then they start looking at homes and they're falling in love with certain properties. And then they talk to someone like me or they go directly to the bank and then their dreams are crushed, right? And I
Yeah.
hate being the person who does that. So I prefer to be upfront at the start, and this is what you can do, or that's what you want to achieve. This is where you need to get to. So there's
Yeah.
no right or wrong. Once you get proper information and you basically educate yourself to where you stand now, well, then you can make proper decisions, informed decisions as, okay, well, I'm not quite where I want to be. Will I wait or will I do it with what I can work with right now? And that's an individual choice, and there's no right or wrong answer. But save yourself a whole heap of heartache and get
Yeah.
proper information and rely on the right source of information rather than my friend's mate got a house and got that's a bit that frustrates me because but it's a mistake I fully get because I'd be guilty of that myself, by the way, in different walks of life.
The urban myths. Like I heard there was a guy who once got this interest rate, so let me ask you this. You talked a little about, okay, so they got proper information and maybe they're not 100% ready today, but there's a process where they need to prepare, they need to organize, they need to get ready, and that could take months and months and months, of course. But what are some of the mistakes you see during that process, during
Okay,
that
and
timeline?
this is a conversation I have on a frequent basis, and again, so understandable. Um, One would be, okay, what most of the banks look to see, Norm, is what, okay, say we've ticked the income box and we know what you qualify for, okay? Then the next stage in this process is, um, how do I describe it? Not being able to prove to the bank that you can meet the repayments, okay? And this is where there's a sort of kind of this one area creates a lot of mistakes that people make, okay? And the first one would be, okay, they would tell me I'm saving €1,000 per month and I'm paying €1,000 per month or 1,500 per month in rent or 2,000 per rent is probably closer to the reality at the moment. So that's what they tell me. And on the back of that information, you kind of go, absolutely, the banks will lend you the money you're looking for. Okay. Then you look at their bank statements and you see, yes, there's €1,000 going out of one account every month, but in a different account, there's €1,000 falling. So they had 10,000 at the start of the month and then 10,000 at the end of the month, and they're still telling me they're saving €1,000. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Because in their head, they're putting 1,000 into an account, but there's another account that it's reducing and they forget that piece, right?
yeah.
Now I'm making that quite stark because it's not quite as drastic as that. It might be 500 is coming out, but so but they're not actually saving €1,000 per month. Okay, and that would be the biggest mistake people would make on that particular um, subject. Okay, the second mistake then that would people would make when it comes to that subject is the rent piece. Okay, and this is easily fixed, but again, it's all part of planning. Okay, there's two ways, but if the best way to pay your rent is literally a direct debit out of your account with the narration that says rent. Okay, clean, simple, no questions get asked. But and I don't like the banks doing this, but say you're living at home, right, and you're paying rent to mum or dad or brother or sister or whatever, and you have their name on the so it's going to Norm, right? Well, they take the view that that's family, and they will not count that as rent because they have this kind of suspicious view that if I give you money for rent, that you can give it back to me in cash,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
you're not paying rent at all. So I don't quite buy that because I know when I was at home and I was handing up money for rent at the early part of my life, my mother wasn't giving it back to me that much, but the banks were definitely
But
take.
if that was something that they opened the door on and allowed that, I understand because then everyone could circumvent the whole income requirement, and it would be anyone could just say, oh, deposit 10,000 euros into my account, and here you go, I'm handing it right back to you, and then the
Yeah,
whole qualification for income requirements would just be out the window. They wouldn't be able
well,
to
I'm on the
verify
side
it.
of the people trying to buy the house, right? So, and I would know that if you are paying rent at home, it's not likely coming back to you. So, um, it would just be very important, in my opinion, to not have a family member's name on it. Okay. Uh, and then the third piece of the jigsaw would be we're paying rent. Say they might have a landlord for whatever reasons only wants it in cash. Okay.
Hmm.
So the landlord wants his money in cash, and people are taking money out in dribs and drabs. Well, there's no way of proving there's rent. So if the landlord up again, and it's not always convenient. So say your rent is the 2,000, you might be able to withdraw 2,000 in one go. Okay, so you might have to do 2 days, but you need to have the same amount at the same time, so that there's a regular way of actually pinpointing to the rent that's being paid.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's the biggest, because you're um that's the biggest part of this. Then you've got people who, when it comes to this, are you want, and this is, you want the cleanest accounts possible. Okay, now you've got people now who are sending money, and we might talk about this separately, but people who are sending money back home, or they're lending money to friends, and there's money coming in and coming out, and that just creates not a not clean set of account. Now we all live lives that aren't mundane and aren't boring, but when you're
Don't
presenting,
I know it? Yeah, don't I
yeah,
know it? We're paying everyone and their mother, you know.
yes, exactly. But when you're presenting yourselves to a bank, and I'm saying this tongue in cheek, you want to present yourself like you're living like your life like a monk, right? You go to work, you work 9 to 5, you go home and you watch some TV and you go, yeah, and it's just rinse and repeat, and then you can see the rent going out, and you can see the savings going up, right? And and there's no weird or wonderful things happening, right? As in, you're not giving money to friends, you're not getting money from friends, you're not sending money outside of the country. No, this happens. This is normal life. Excuse me. But we're trying to basically present the cleanest possible application.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
that would certainly get ahead of the game if you manage your bank accounts properly and have a look at them. So
Yeah, so those are some big mistakes that people make or that they could avoid with that information. How about when it's they're all ready with you, you've looked at the mortgage and their paperwork, okay, you're ready to go house hunting now. What are some of the mistakes you see people make during that process where they're going to talk to agents and actually go in properties and put offers down?
okay, that's a great question. Ultimately, it's a right. There's two types of people buy houses here in Ireland. One is very much a there's new properties and there's second-hand properties, right? The new properties, it's a very simple process. You offer, the price might be 450, 550. You say yes or no, and you put a booking fee down. So there's no real mistakes can be made there. Obviously, in a perfect world, you're getting to the when the launch is being made, you're getting there first, so you're getting the best choice of houses. But so if you're getting a cancellation, it can sometimes be because someone didn't like something about the house. So it mightn't have been of say 100 houses were being launched, it might be the one that's in the least desirable position. Or there might be some. So if it's a cancellation, I'd always say to you, just ask why it was cancelled, because sometimes it could be simple. The bank could suddenly turn around and say no, okay, or suddenly they could have learned something about the house that made it not as desirable and would make them rethink their choice, basically. So
Hmm.
that's very simple on the new properties. When it comes to second-hand properties, you're kind of looking at, now this is a totally different game, and I've done some videos on in terms of how to play the game, right? Um, the biggest mistake I find people making is just bidding for the sake of bidding.
Yeah.
They
They get
go,
caught up in the
yeah,
emotion,
absolutely. They
the
see a
fear
house at
of
the week,
missing out, the
yeah,
FOMO, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
They see a house at the weekend, right, and they go, "We want it," right?
How about mistakes when, let's say, your offer is accepted and you actually have to then you do all of your work with the banks, or you're a mortgage broker, of course. And so what are some of the mistakes that you see clients make during that final process?
Well, most of the time it's quite simple. There's less chance for mistakes at that stage, right? There is obviously, if they don't move quickly, because obviously there's some requirements that the bank may have asked for at the point they've gone to the grid, and that if they're slow in getting that information back, it can slow the process up, and then they can be under pressure to sign contracts, and just can lead to stress, right? The one mistake I would make, I would highlight, that's important. One of the conditions of any mortgage is always going to be life insurance. Okay, so if there's any, like we only had a case there recently whereby at the last moment they told us, well, actually had been a significant health issue, right? And
Mm.
we always ask that question, and we always ask it at an early point, and they were saying no, everything's fine, and then suddenly when we got down to it, there was and that has caused a significant problem because they may or may not get the insurance. Okay, so
Oof.
yeah, and that's obviously one of the conditions. So um, that's stressful. Okay, so if there is anything, so in the background, if there's tests being done, or if there was a health issue at some stage that might be overcome, but enough to know that an insurance company, when they get that level of information, are going to ask more questions. There is there's absolute value in at the stage the day you've agreed, and whatever, within a day or two of actually agreeing to buy a house, you talk to us around that piece, and
Yeah.
then we look at that to make sure that that doesn't cause a delay at a stage whereby, okay, you've left that to the last minute to organize, and then suddenly, well, oh yeah, yeah, God, um, I was in hospital last year for a mini stroke, or sorry,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
exaggerating, but something
Yeah.
that's going to cause a serious, well, hold on, question mark. And
Yeah.
if you can't get an insurance, then suddenly the bank could renege on the loan offer, and that leads
Yeah.
to a whole stressful situation.
Oh,
So
yeah. Yeah.
now we always tend to find a way, but you never know the day where you don't find a way. Okay, and
Or that way may be more costly, right? So,
exactly. So it's more a case of well, bring that, look at that, sort of talk to us about that. Now, obviously, even with new houses, they can take 6 to 9 months, but you don't have to put anything in place. Do you understand? You don't have to put it live. It doesn't need to start costing you money, but just have it ready to press a button. Do you know that kind of way? So that's that's one area where people make mistakes as well. Um, there's one other thing, changing subject slightly, going back to um, people's the mistakes that people make, and it's going back to the income piece. It would
mhm.
be, I don't know why this enters my mind when we were just talking about that, but self
Sure.
self-employed people
Hmm.
always misunderestimate or overestimate what they're earning. They
Mm.
they might think their turnover is 100,000, and they're saying that's what their salary is. It's not. So so
That's
imagine,
gross, not net, right?
yeah, it's the net that's they're thinking they're gross. So imagine going back to, you could have a double whammy. They talk to Frank, their mate, who says you can get 4.5 times their salary, and then suddenly they're saying I'm earning 100,000 when they're not. Then suddenly their expectation is so out of line. So for self-employed people, there is an opportunity of kind of almost reverse engineering. If you know what you want to get to, you know what your business needs to do. Okay. But it's really, actually, people live their lives day to day, and I'm guilty of this myself. They don't really fully understand the numbers behind their business, right? And again, self-employed people need to get a full, because the banks will take into account, if they're a limited company, they will take into account the profit they're keeping and the salary. But it, that will be one area whereby um, getting proper advice is
Mm.
absolutely essential. Sorry, I don't know why that entered my head there.
No, that's great. Any of these mistakes are great information for people to know and to see them coming, and they could watch the podcast. And whether you're starting the process, you're in the middle of the process, you want to see the whole terrain, the whole map in front of you, and where the
Yeah,
pitfalls are. So, and anything else that comes to mind? Any general mistakes? Any crazy
yeah.
cases you've seen?
Well, for example, um, and I think we touched on this earlier on. I did say I'd talk about it in more detail. People who are like, we have a lot of people who are non-Irish, who are kind of
Hmm.
maybe from Brazil, from India, from America, wherever they may be from, and sending money back home, okay, is, in my opinion, fraught with, well, it adds to the red tapeness of it, and sometimes it can actually be judged, held against you. So, and I don't like this, but say you're sending money back home to help family, okay, which is often the case, and you're sending maybe 300 or 400 euro or 500 euro back home. Some of the banks here take the view, and I fundamentally do not agree with this, okay, but they take the view that that's the same as a loan commitment, okay,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you're sending, they'd say to you, well, that's what you're sending home, and that rule would potentially reduce the money that the bank will lend to you. Okay, or
Hmm.
if they're seeing money being sent back home, it'll mean they look to see a credit report from back in your home, which then is another piece of paper, which then could create more questions, right? So fundamentally, I think people should be allowed to do what they want with their own money. Okay, and if they want to help their family with their own money, that's their choice, right? That's my fundamental ethical belief in this. So, but the banks have a different view on this. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not saying to people don't help their family, okay, but I'm saying do it in a smart way. Do it
Yeah.
where it can't be seen going out of your bank account. If you want to take money out of your bank account in cash and get it sent home a different way, that's what I would recommend. And maybe I should be maybe giving bad advice there, but I don't like the concept of banks saying to you what you can and cannot do with your money. And
Yeah. Yeah.
if
Yeah.
if that's to help your family, well, you shouldn't be penalized for it, but that is what's happening. Okay, so
Yeah.
you can probably hear the
Well, the
passion.
banks are lending money. They know what dangers and red flags they could set the rules, and so you're playing the game, so you have to know the
Absolutely,
rules, right?
you are playing the
Yeah.
game, and I'm just I wouldn't say giving away to circumvent it. It's what it's when you're putting an application in, it's all about what's seen on paper,
Yeah.
basically, right?
Yeah.
So um, I just fundamentally think people should be allowed to spend their own money in their own way without it being held against you, especially. But listen, I won't. I'm not going to change their view on this, right? But I can help people um, manage it properly so that they're not being penalized
Great.
for doing some good. Okay. But I hope
Amazing. Amazing information.
I hope the banks don't see this because I mean, why are you telling them this? So
Yeah. No, no,
um,
no, no. Of course. You're
uh,
just offering general information and guidance. And
yeah,
to that point, yeah, this is great. You really help people out with what they should be looking for and the mistakes to avoid. As usual, great info, John.
oh, sorry, I'm having these flashbacks because we've done this. I think we should put a disclaimer out. This we have done this. This is being recorded at 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning. Okay, so that's
Yeah.
probably. I think we better put that out there. That's a big mistake in its own right. So as I'm beginning to wake up, more and more ideas are coming into my head. Right.
I was going to say, so the mistake is don't let me talk you into a podcast at 9 a.m. on a Sunday morning, huh?
Yes, that's it. So, because then you dark shadows over my eyes, Norm, you're to blame. But with the people who are buying new properties, right? They
Mm,
automatically assume, and I've seen this, that they qualify for the full 30,000, which is the maximum. Okay. Um, and they say, well, I've been paying enough tax, and I say, listen, it's all. I agree with you, but revenue are God in this scenario. So make sure you check that out because to make an assumption that you're going to get 30,000 and when you only get 20, well, that's a huge. So don't. I'm not saying you're wrong, but get that confirmed because knowing exactly how much you'll get dictates how much you're going to need to bring to the deal. Okay, so that would be another. So we're probably I'm probably on this a bit disjointed, but I'm blaming you for this
no, it's
nightmare.
okay.
Okay.
Blame it's all my fault. It's always my fault. No, great information. And
Yeah,
thank you for sharing that. I'm sure once we get off the podcast later today, oh, I forgot this mistake. But of course, people could always get in touch with you, could
yeah.
always have a conversation, and you have a million other blogs, videos, PDFs, anything that they need to help guide them.
You definitely forced me to do a lot of that stuff. So you're this. I'm passing on the thank you and gratitude for you
Yeah.
steering me down the right path. You've given me my marketing roadmap, shall we say, right? So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and now you've even got me doing this on video, which is certainly well, I have developed as a human being thanks to you because the last thing you'd have seen was you wouldn't have caught me dead doing a video. Um, 2 years ago, I think. So you initially teased me into just doing a podcast, and now look at us, we're doing this on video, and well, thank you for that, mate. You're pushing my boundaries, you know.
Yeah, as do you mine. But honestly, anything people love video these days, and they want to work with a human being, they want to work with an expert, and they want your valuable
And I'm
advice and
real. This is
insight.
an AI creation, by
Yeah,
the way.
yeah, exactly. Fantastic information. And thank you so much for guiding people through the mistakes and what they could avoid and making the process smoother, better, and ultimately getting the mortgage and the home they really want, John.
Not a problem. It was a pleasure. I'll wake up now properly and we'll get about my day. But I think I've covered 90% of all mistakes there. So obviously, for anyone that has any specific questions, you know where we are, and more than happy to help. That's our role here, and this is to avoid mistakes ultimately. So thanks to everyone for
Absolutely.
listening.
Yeah, thank you again, everyone listening, subscribing, sharing. We appreciate the support. If you ever had a question, a topic you wanted us to cover, John's willing and able to do so. So, TN
Thanks.
Mortgage number 34. Take care, everyone.